Our power elite is a global techno occult, the GTO as I call it. They seek control of our dreaming minds to seduce or force us to relinquish our sovereignty over our own bodies, our temples of the Holy Spirit, so that they may then recreate us in their image, the image of the fallen. They utilize the GRIN technologies, genetics, robotics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology, mixing steel with watery clay, as Daniel prophesies, to overcome that first prophecy of Genesis 3:15, enmity between the serpent seed and the seed of the woman. Martin Heidegger has pointed out that we have lost our sense of wonder, our feelings of authenticity, the experience of the sheer radiance and miracle of being. Having willingly sacrificed our communities to impersonal structures of social management and exploitation. Our experience of creation has been stolen, but our sense of human being can be restored. A first step is to realize the enemy through the GTO power elite has embedded us in an occult Twilight language that drains our authenticity of being by immersing us in a chaotic burlesque of communication, in which our knowledge of ourselves as images of the divine is lost. We are in a pressure cooker of noise, which renders true apprehension of being and creation unobtainable. Twilight language is the visible spectrum of the occult imperative. Remember, the GTO is a technical occult elite. We don't see it because of the willful ignorance we employ to maintain comfort and self-satisfaction with the sorcerous system of things. We are constantly undergoing neuro-linguistic programming, which has so damaged and dulled our autonomic nervous system that we seek thrilling jolts at higher and higher doses like a long-term dope addict to feel normal. We live within a sorcerous system. By means of the occult, public rituals disguised as random terrorism or war, serial murder, or the threats of disease, we are controlled and processed. The language of symbolism is used to speak to our subconscious, usually revealing exactly the opposite of what the system puts forth through the media. Culture is a carnival sideshow thrill dome. Since the buildings were ritually brought down in 2001, all of us have been processed as initiates, members of the secret society without knowing it. Most Americans intuit that there is a power elite that engages in occult processes, including human sacrifice. They secretly find this thrilling and anxiously seek out more thrills. The GTO seeks to alchemically bring about the reign of dead matter. Dead matter equals machines, robotics, artificial intelligence. In 2020, Elon Musk said machines will surpass human intelligence before 2025. Primordial matter was created and destroyed with atomic incineration on the 33rd degree of latitude on the authority of the 33rd president, who was a 33rd degree Mason, who replaced FDR when he died suddenly in Warm Springs, Georgia, again at the 33rd degree of latitude. The blasphemously named Trinity site in New Mexico, the land of enchantment, was where this primordial ritual took place on July 16th, which is 7/7 in Hebrew Gematria, 1945. According to Michael Hoffman, whom I quote quite liberally in this presentation, America was catapulted into psychic Oz less than 2 decades later with the killing of the king ritual at Masonic Dealey Plaza near the Triple Underpass between the 32nd and 33rd degrees of north parallel latitude on the dualistic date of 11/22. Hoffman further believes that a unit within the United States government, or those that influence it the most, propitiate the dark forces with human sacrifice in serial killings and mass shootings. And of course, war. That sum of all evils whose primary intent may be the shedding of blood on behalf of unclean spirits. Casey Brown and his Enter the Stars YouTube channel seems to have a most perceptive grasp by the way of the Holy Spirit on the Twilight language of occult alchemical symbols in which we are embedded, perceiving even the most subtle whispering in the birthdays of actors chosen to play certain roles. The fallen and their human collaborators are playing multi-level chess, not checkers, as Brother Minister Theo says on his Unplug 'em channel. Casey has discerned this language in the ubiquity of the number 19 in the concept of dualism. 19 is related to the Metonic cycle. The Metonic cycle was used in Babylon and was the basis for the ancient Greek calendar, still being used to calculate movable dates such as Easter. The cycle is based on the fact that the new and full moon returns to the same days of the calendar every 19 years. In 2020, freedom and privacy were irrevocably crippled due to a worldwide illness with 19 in its very name. 19 years before that, in 2001, dualistic buildings were brought through an inferno to dust and rubble in a ritual planned long ago and fraught with Twilight language, as this Metonic cycle is also a 19-year cycle of sacrifice. There were 19 hijackers, 19 trident columns on the World Trade Center facade. Even the famous date, the same number as the number for the emergency, contains 19 backwards. Interestingly, for the last half a century, a number of scholars have asserted that this date is the true birthday of the Messiah, the actual Advent. Two Metonic cycles ago was 1963, a year whose 4 digits numerologically add up to 19. JFK, the dualistically Gemini president, was killed on 11/22, a completely dualistic date. Dualism represents many important concepts to the GTO, hence the many symbolic representations of doubleness. Janus, the two-faced god; Gemini, the twins; the 2-in-1 of demonic possession; humankind trapped between the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil; and in the Kabbalistic belief that Adam Kadmon, who originally was both male and female, and we must all unite our masculine and feminine energies to be whole. So what, I wonder, was the 1982 event, 19 years after the JFK assassination and 19 years before the 11th of September's towering infernos? Indeed, 1982 contained a constellation of events. The first commercial use of genetic engineering is launched when human insulin produced by bacteria is marketed. Michael Jackson's Thriller and E.T. were pop cultural signposts. Casey seems to think that these cycles coincide with things that cause isolation, deprivation, and fear. In 1982, it was the Cold War going hot in proxy wars like Nicaragua. I would also suggest along these lines, the outbreak into public consciousness of herpes and AIDS may also have had this effect. Sexual freedom could now kill you. I know also that the Nicaraguan Contra War and the cocaine supply line of my father's friend Barry Seals was going to start the crack epidemic, which devastated scores of communities pardon me, and families, stoking the flames of every imaginable human evil. On 9/25/82 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, there was a mass shooting. The death toll of 13 was the worst since the first famous mass shooting in Church of Satan founding year and Batman series, TV series premiere year 1966 by Charles Whitman, an ex-Marine, killing 17 people from the Texas bell tower. For some reason, Mother Jones starts its list of mass killings from this Wilkes-Barre shooting on its list of mass shootings 1982 to 2022. Between 1966 and 1982, only 2 other mass shootings had casualties in double digits. One with 10 people murdered and one with 11. The first of these being the Howard Johnson's racially tinged shooting in my hometown of New Orleans in 1973. The second, the Easter Sunday massacre in Hamilton, Ohio, 1975. The first person the shooter in Wilkes-Barre killed outside of his home was named Jimmy Olsen, touching on the Superman, Batman, Twilight language, which Casey Brown is exploring in depth, and to which we will return on this channel. Most of those killed in this shooting were children, as was the case in the previous double-digit death mass shooting a 7-year cycle before in 1975, suggesting a possible emphasis on Moloch child sacrifice. The smiley emoticon, a disease omen according to Casey Brown, was invented in 1982 by Scott Fallman of GTO flagship Carnegie Mellon University. The smiley face itself was invented in the previous Metonic cycle, 1963, by State Mutual Life Insurances. Exactly 1 week after the JFK assassination, the Beatles had their first #1 record released in the United States. Also that year, zip codes debuted, and the Sabin oral polio vaccine taken with a lump of sugar were given in widely in the US and the UK. The Metonic event prior to the Kennedy assassination then was possibly in December 1944, when the first mass production of plutonium commenced. Named after the fallen god of the underworld and the dead, plutonium production coincided with the completion of the construction of Fat Man, which would deliver a nuclear bomb to the old women and infant children of Nagasaki. Allegedly a last-minute choice because of the weather, the center of Christianity in Japan, and a place of no strategic military value at all. The bookend events for this Metonic year of sacrifice may well have been the D-Day invasion of Normandy on 6/6/1945, and the 2 terrorist nuclear bombings of Japan, which commenced on 8/6/1945, a date whose single digits add up to 33. In an event officially ordered by the 33rd president, a 33rd degree Mason, who succeeded another Mason who died in office on the 33rd degree of north latitude. That is Twilight language. These bombings of civilians were completely unnecessary, as MacArthur's blockade was working magnificently with nothing going in or out of Japan. The emperor who was pursuing back channels, the Emperor Hirohito, to save face for peace, was negotiating with the cardinal who would become Pope Paul VI. But the people who controlled Truman were represented by big-time Wall Street lawyers Prescott Bush, the father and grandfather of Republican presidents, and Averell Harriman, the son of the great robber baron and champion of the Democratic Party. This marvelous early bipartisan spirit in Wall Street's Brown Brothers Harriman firm also financed Hitler's rise to power and was actually busted for trading with the enemy after the war started. Following the creation and destruction of primordial matter alchemy, the atomic incineration at the 33rd degree north latitude Trinity site in New Mexico, the land of enchantment, we proceeded to the next Masonic sacrifice, the killing of the King Rite in Masonic Dealey Plaza near the Triple Underpass and on the 32nd degree of north parallel latitude on November 2nd, 1963. This mass trauma-based mind control catapulted our nation into a psychic land of Oz from which we have yet to emerge. The virtuoso managers of the once and future America as crime scene have gone from victory to victory in what until recently was allegedly a Christian nation. Michael Hoffman has learned in 40 years of sleuthing secret languages and coded messages, mass shootings and serial killings that what he calls a unit of the cryptocracy inside the U.S. government propitiates dark forces with human sacrifices. Son of Sam, Hillside Strangler, Columbine High School, Aurora, Colorado Batman killing, Las Vegas in front of pharaonic Egyptian recreations. Most of the actual killers and commanders of these events have walked free. The blame does not go to the secret cabals or to Republicans or Democrats. According to Hoffman, it goes to the millions of human beings who comprise the United States of amnesia, of apathy, of genuinely eerie indifference. Following 9/11, there were public calls from prominently placed people to unshackle the intelligence agencies, to make alliances with drug cartels or whoever or whatever was necessary to hunt down terrorists and to take action regardless of the people caught in the crossfire, and to do wider surveillance detention for questioning and other precautions. That generally met with unified public support. Americans were always preoccupied with the dazzlement of modernity, too busy to notice the creation of the FBI National Police Force by Teddy Roosevelt's executive order when an opposing Congress was out of session, or the beginning of the surveillance state and professional propaganda during World War I under Wilson. These and many apparati since, like the Patriot Act, is the machinery that the enemy needs to ape the omniscience of the Almighty, with the full spectrum dominance that's coming into our lives. In Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, Hoffman points out that pedophile Arthur C. Clarke was one of the anointed prophets who, with his work 2001, A Space Odyssey, signaled to initiates and self-initiates that the new millennium, which truly began with the year 2001, not 2000, was the beginning of the new epic of human alchemy. Hoffman says 2001 and the century it symbolizes marks the symbolic end of the preparatory processing phase intended to program us into accepting the appearance of the devil himself as our presiding overlord. The attack on the WTC is represented by number 16 in the tarot deck, the Tower card. The attack on the Pentagon by the Tarot's number 5 of Pentacles. 16 plus 5 equals 21. The 2001 gateway to the 21st century epic. God is always sovereign, and this is the fall of Babel and all subsequent Babels built with godlike conceit. The Freemasons know this. The greatest deviltry is performed fully conscious of the consequences. Truth or consequences in New Mexico is on the 33rd degree parallel as well. Hoffman tells us the downfall of the towering inferno of September the 11th is the 911 emergency call to the psyche of the group mind. unleashing imprisoned energy. A burst of illuminated consciousness was released on that date. Properly channeled and directed, this group mind energy is harnessed to produce conditions for the imposition of an even more enormous and conceited tower. Every successive Babel is more towering than the previous one. The empire of the grand architect builds back better from the ruins. The Pentagon represents the blazing star of Freemasonry. Albert Pike said this symbolizes the dog star for Freemasons, Sirius, personified by the Egyptians as Set-An, Satan. Sirius is also the door through which Satan's power manifests on earth in the form of the exploitation of the feminine principle of wounded but undying nature under the occult veil of Isis. She who bleeds and is not injured. She who bleeds and does not die. This 21st century epoch is the age appointed for the corporal manifestation of the overlord in Masonic progression from 20 years ago in 2001 to 2021, where the overlord walks among us only partially concealed, progressively more transparent. His civic acceptance is prophesied to be virtually universal. The Twin Towers on number 11, a double day, planted seeds of doubt and wonder deep in the subconscious of Americans. 21st century Americans are not the same as 1950s Americans. We have been run through the middle that is the psychedelic funhouse ritual roller coaster ever since that other double day, the 22nd of November. The JFK assassination forced Americans to confront a scary alternative reality of a shadow government over which they had neither control or knowledge. This accelerated the shepherding process with a vengeance. From now on, advertising, music, politics, and news would depict the shadow side of reality, an underground, amoral funhouse current associated with extreme sex, extreme violence, and extreme speed. The establishment was more and more depicted as subordinate to the shadow state. This simultaneously produces both terror and adulation, which undercuts any offensive against it. September 11th did the same thing. A tradition of occult governance is that the actual ruler does not show himself until his power becomes absolute. This idea, this sense of hidden rulers behind the figurehead politicians has bored deep into the consciousness of the American people. The attack on the New York Towers and the District of Columbia Pentagon constitute an electrifying, lightning-like revelation. There is a momentary X-ray-like perception, illuminating flash of insight. This insight is suppressed and denied through the chatter of talking head spin doctors. So there is tension between the public world solvers and explainers with the official line and the serious B-side, Shadow of Spectre's Dark Truth. Torn between these two extreme, society is bipolar. Since 2001, these insights have been leaked to the masses by the establishment itself in bits and pieces. This doubles the awe in which we hold the godlike rulers until their power is absolute. At that point, the overlord blackjack is set to assume public universal physical manifestation. Trance states induced in the masses who, in keeping with the revelation of the method elements, experience certain dreamlike hypnotic cues dropped by the media and the government, suggesting that it is necessary for high officials of the United States government and the media to lie to the American people. On September 29, 2001, the Bipolar made visible. Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, held a news conference quoting Winston Churchill. In wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. Our media and our entertainment has told us that it is necessary to lie to the public to undertake psychological warfare and psyops. On September 19, 2001, Andrea Mitchell of NBC News, who was also the wife of Federal Bank Chairman Alan Greenspan, said that certain financiers had advanced knowledge of the catastrophe and profited from the fall of insurance and brokerage stocks through the purchase of put options. The contracts of these put options were hundreds of times above average in the days just prior to 9/11. We are going to keep exploring the crucial concept of Twilight language and David Hoffman's work, going deeper into the esoteric meanings of the atomic bombings, the King Kill 33 JFK assassination, and the full spectrum dominant surveillance society transhumanism, the worldwide disease inaugurated in 2020, the twinning year. We will also be examining the concept of Casey Brown and possible applications to history, the present, and the future. These include, take a deep breath, dark water, dark baptism, dead pools, black goo, canopic jars, demonic time travel 88, Trump is Biff, Trump is Batman, the shaving ritual, Willow, Will Smith family, alopecia, the 1939 World's Fair, needle parks, Apollo and Artemis, copper blue bloods, the secret life of umbrellas, and the serpent arrow in the chest, and much, much more Twilight language. Please visit Casey's Enter the Stars YouTube channel. You'll be glad you did. This is Gumbo Craig, and this is Walking Out of Babylon. All glory to the Most High God. Shalom.